We always make an effort to be connected and develop these long-term relationships with the guest by having a positive mindset about them. This is Keys to the Shop, episode 506, Critical Workflows for Your Cafe. Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFirio. I am your host for the show. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today, and I truly mean it. Without your support, this show obviously would not be a thing, and it's been so gratifying and humbling to just learn how much this show is listened to and appreciated, and you all are so good about sharing with me when you see me in person or just email how this has helped you. So I just want to say thank you for all the encouragement, and if you are not subscribed to the show, then I would encourage you to just hit subscribe wherever you're listening to your podcasts. And also on YouTube, our interviews right now and our shift breaks are on YouTube. So we record as much as we can the video, and you can view that there. And native content to YouTube will come out soon, so stay tuned. We're almost to 2,000 followers on YouTube. Going to probably break that this year, and we can rely on your help, I know, to do that. So subscribe both of those places. That'd be awesome. And share these episodes where and when you can. Now, one of the things I spend a lot of my time doing is coaching and consulting one-on-one with coffee shop owners who need an outside perspective to help them walk through challenges and opportunities in their coffee business. The operations, people, and quality of your cafe are things that need to be examined every now and again, and working with a consultant like Keys to the Shop Consulting is something that can help you get clarity on your next steps. And when you're working with me one-on-one, we get to put together custom solutions to help you get there. So if you are a coffee shop owner and you're looking for assistance in bringing your cafe to the next level, solving some problems, and just taking advantage of good opportunities that all of your hard work has brought about for you, Keys to the Shop Consulting is here to help you. So go ahead and email chris@keystotheshop.com. That's CHRIS @keystotheshop.com. Looking to onboard some new clients for 2025. These are anywhere from really small projects to large projects. We've got a couple of months-long engagements. We've got multi-year clients and everything in between. But I would love to have a conversation with you. Again, reach out for Keys to the Shop Consulting, chris@keystotheshop.com. Now, today's episode is sponsored by two companies that you need to check out. One is the Ground Control at groundcontrol.coffee with the amazing brewer that brews amazing coffee. And then you have the Barista series from Pacific, the plant-based beverage powerhouse that creates amazing beverages for the specialty coffee community at pacificfoodservice.com. We're going to talk about those folks later in the episode today, but I wanted to start off right away by just introducing the topic, and that is critical workflows for your cafe. Now, one of the things that you need to have in the cafe is systems. We talk about this a lot. We talk about checklists and SOPs and, having systems and policies and standards for your coffee shop. And I will constantly have this conversation with you and with my clients, which is these are things that where, yes, maybe you can download certain things, but you really have to go through the work mentally and physically of creating these so that they reflect the actual thing that you want to happen in your coffee shop. So you can't put together a standard or a system that is borrowed from somebody else and expect it to work, because the primer that keeps the paint on the wall is the intentionality and effort that you put in to the creation of that system for the people that you're serving and who you're working with. And you yourself as a operator need to grow in your strength and ability to handle the business. And so I don't start people off in consulting with, 75 pages of policies and documents, everything you need to know to run a coffee shop, and bada bing, bada boom. It's not how it works, because you're not ready to be able to follow through on all of those stringent standards and highly detailed things that you borrow from other companies that have been doing it for so long that it has become just natural to them. I'm not going to go and lift a 700-pound weight above my head. Well, ever in my life, probably. Like, do people do that? Of course, somebody does that. But I'm not going to do it. All that to say, you have to build up using less before you get more. And the key there is you need to be able to start with the right things. So where I don't encourage you to start with the end all be all, this is all you'll ever need for the rest of your coffee shop life promises out there about, templates and stuff like that. And even if you do download those things, just know that you have to still, if you want it to be effective yourself. That's what makes these things effective. They're not magic. Documents are not magic. Systems are not magic. They are simply a representation of something that is executed by people. They don't just get up in the morning, clock in, and do the work for your employees. They're a tool used by people. Okay, so I got that caveat out of the way, right? Now let's go into the idea of workflows that your cafe needs. And I'm just going to cover 3 things with you today, just 3, because there's lots of other systems we could think about. But I'm going to start with one that's fairly obvious, and I think that everybody focuses on this first. We have an episode on workflow with Ryan Soder. It's our first episode ever out there, and that was a fantastic episode. That was about workflow for drinks, and that is what you need to have for every beverage that you have on the bar. Every variation should have some kind of a workflow attached to it so that when an order comes in, you know exactly what to do and where the tools are. It's the whole mise en place, everything in its place. We have created this bar, hopefully, if you listen to our episode on design principles for building bars, the bar is supposed to be built around the menu that you created that is also created to represent what you want people to experience in your cafe. You see how that's a linear flow. That's a workflow in and of itself. So the workflow is going to depend upon how you build your bar. We already know that in principle, bar building is about creating stations that have within their reach the tools they need to do the critical work in that station to then pass to the next station, if indeed there is a next station, the drink or the food, so that it can be finished and given to the customer. So that bar needs to be outfitted to reflect the responsibilities of those stations, but the actual responsibilities themselves need to be detailed. And one of those details is, what does it mean step by step to make a latte, to make an iced latte versus a hot latte? What's the build order? Does that build order make sense according to how your bar is built? Do we have a bar built one way and a workflow built the other way? And I see that a lot where you might want the barista to finish the drink by putting ice in it, but the ice machine is where the drink started. So now I got to double back. In that case, even though you'd prefer to have ice last, you probably better just start with ice first unless you build your ice machine or move your ice machine over to the other side, right? So the workflow has to reflect the reality on the ground, unless you change that reality to optimize the workflow. And this is how we are able to promise our customers consistency, because we have a system that says it's not just guesswork to know what drinks to prioritize, for example, on the bar, or how we're going to build iced versus hot, or the fact that we have to whisk this sauce into the espresso versus the syrup, which is not as viscous and it doesn't need to be whisked by a whisk because it will mix when we pour the drink. There's little things that you've got to physically do with your hands and see with your eyes and then note. Like a naturalist, you're the Galapagos now, detailing finches, except they're lattes. And you're saying, there's the nature of this drink and the nature of that drink. And you create the workflow according to that. And you do that with all of your beverages. And if you can do that step by step in very fine detail for all of your beverages, even down to the last step being serving the customer the drink so that the latte art is facing them symmetrically, it's really the little details that matter. But having gone through that process, you will not only get a good workflow for the way that the drinks are built on the bar and who does what to assemble those drinks in those stations, you're going to find the inadequacies of what you assumed was a good setup on your bar. even if you did the pre-planning. Because the fact is that until you actually start making drinks on your cafe's bar, you're not going to understand exactly how it works under pressure. In my trainings with clients, and before I was doing client work with consulting, we would always try to stress test these things. The 2-person bar would end up with a line of friends and family, for example, or we would mock order a bunch of orders. And then, like we talked about in our last shift break, talking about realistic training for baristas. The reason you do that is because when you're testing your bar's workflow, you're looking for bottlenecks. You're saying, okay, well, originally this station was supposed to be putting syrups in the cup, but we see now that it doesn't work. And so because it doesn't work, we're going to reassign responsibility. We're going to figure out what these stations really should be doing because we see now really clearly that it's too much. Better you find that out in a controlled environment than on the day where customers are counting on you to kind of have it all together. They do. They figure that you do have it all together. You opened a coffee shop. Obviously, you're an expert. We all know that's not true. We all know that we're just learning this now, and it's stressful, and we are all suffering from imposter syndrome. And so give yourself an opportunity to do well beforehand. And if you're already working on a bar right now, you already have your bar, you just have to observe these things. Go on intentional noticing campaigns for those bottlenecks. As we've talked about systems and implementing systems, this is what you need to do to optimize your workflow for drink creation on the bar. That's one of the main workflows that your customers need and your staff need you to get right and get better at constantly. And even if you need to disassemble your bar and build it a better way, and it costs you a little bit of money to do so, it is probably the most important thing, more important than switching out your couch for a new couch or having cool furniture, because the customer ultimately will benefit more from you doing better work, making the thing they came to you for, than they will being comfortable enjoying an inconsistent drink. Okay, so drink workflow and detailing that in your manual for baristas to show them what it looks like to build these drinks and these sets of drinks and what categories of drinks to prioritize. Do you make espresso first when an espresso comes through, or do you just make it in order that it was served or ordered? And what kind of pre-prep should be done by the POS for the barista on the espresso machine, in knowing that that drink has a lot more touch points and it's a lot heavier of a load, so they want to help out a little bit so it can get out faster. There's a lot of questions you need to answer, and that happens when you put yourself into the chaos of figuring all of that out. And that's what I mean by not simply downloading these things and saying, it should, quote unquote, work. It won't work exactly the way it should because it came from somebody else and it's not built specifically for your bar. You are the builder of the bar. It's not just the physical bar you're building, it's the bar in operation. The operations are being built by you, and you just have to get used to that voice in your head that says, you don't know what you're doing, you don't know what you're doing. You could just talk back to that voice and say, that's why I'm doing it, so that I can get to know what to do. You can use tools and inspiration. You can use this podcast and other people as inspirations, but you still need to be in the mix of it, figuring it out, detailing, chronicling, fine-tuning, refining, testing, and then launching that workflow. Now, the next workflow that you need to have is when you change something on the bar. And when I don't even mean just like changing the way you make espresso, but introducing a new beverage, introducing a new initiative, something that is different. Different is dangerous. We learned this from Stan Slapp, the author of the book Under the Hood, past guest on the show. We'll link in the show notes. But the whole point is that the community or the staff themselves are a group. And that is a culture that is its own culture. You, as the boss, are not in that culture. And as a result, you are the curator of culture. And what you talk about is either going to be viewed as safe or unsafe. The way you make things safe is by creating and maintaining expectations that are in deference to the needs of the people responsible for doing the thing. Let's break that down. The people who are responsible for giving the discount to first responders in your cafe need to know, catch this, that there's a discount for first responders in your cafe. So many people just show up to work one day and all of a sudden they're faced with an onslaught of, whatever the owner decided to do at 3 a.m. because they were inspired. And it's your right, okay? It's your right to do that as the owner, but it's also your right to screw everybody by not having a workflow for how these kinds of decisions are put into the cafe in the first place. When objects come back into the Earth's atmosphere, NASA accounts for some atmospheric burn. There's going to be some drag. That's why there's so much heat resistance built in and engineered into the craft that come through the atmosphere. They account for atmospheric change. And all of us are so miffed and wondering, why are people so frustrated and not promoting the new specials and not excited and engaged, when all along we've just kind of been throwing things into the atmosphere and it's been burning up and burning. And we're like, where is this all going? I don't understand why my words are not landing. If it burned up, it can't land. So you need to say, look, what's happening in my cafe? People are doing their job. They're working, they're making lattes, cappuccinos, they're closing, they're mopping, they're spilling stuff, they're frustrated, they have personal lives. And all of this is happening in an 8-hour period, working with other people and the public. So then, if you think about it, we don't have a right to complain when people can't hear us above the din and the noise of normal everyday cafe, unless there is a system that everybody knows about, that everyone even gets to contribute to, and they understand is part of that expectation. Change is a system. It has to be systematized in order to be accounted for and not seen as dangerous. So yeah, we're going to have seasonal beverages. Guess when those happen? Seasonally. But even more so, there's going to be maybe deadlines for submissions. There's going to be parameters for, expenses for cost of goods. There's going to be a time where we show you and that you taste it and everybody gets to experience it. And then even then, we're not ready to launch it. We're going to start promoting it. We need to get understanding now. And now everyone's got understanding and training and they've tasted and all of this is just primed and ready to go. Now we launch it. And that could take, if you have fall beverage menus that you're launching, you should have started, if you launched on September 1st, August 1st is the date you should have started. And some people start before that even because they have bigger companies and more locations. So the R&D work and going through this change workflow for how we're going to do batch brew coffee or seasonal beverages or a change to the workflow or a policy that's different. It all has to have a system and multiple steps that take into account that people are going to have to get used to that change. Familiarized, prepared, questions answered, understanding gained, launched, and then you have to follow up with those people and say, okay, how is it going? And be responsible that you're going to follow through with that observation of what's, how is this new way of making cappuccinos working? How is this new policy looking? And I get the feeling that if we said that's what we're going to do for every change, we're going to have a workflow, and it doesn't have to be like a multi-month process for every little thing. But a lot of big things that do throw a wrench into the works get pushed into the cafe as though the staff are just supposed to suck it up and do it and magically not have some kind of friction happen in their brains and their emotions because you just threw it in there as almost a slap in the face, to be honest with you. So this is the workflow that you need to institute in your cafe. It's a change workflow. You talk about implementing systems in the cafe. It's an episode that we did in the past. I think we'll link to it in the show notes if you want to see what change workflow kind of looks like. But things change in the cafe. It's about communication, and communication is like a love language. If you truly care for your staff, you're going to be communicating very clearly, very well, and you're going to get better yourself at communicating and be open to the idea that you might need to change. Because this business that you opened is changing. And if you don't change with it, you're going to be constantly burning through employees. Your changes are not going to actually get implemented because people see them as dangerous because it just appeared out of nowhere and it's just like this threat. So let's get that system in place. Let's get the workflow of change in place so that management can hold itself accountable and staff can feel that they can trust that management actually has their best interest in mind, even though some things might be changing, okay? I know that seems like a pipe dream, but trust me, it is possible. You might find yourself making fewer changes in the cafe. That might be for the better if you knew that you had to go through all this. And frankly, if you want this stuff to stick and you want it to work, you do. Hey everybody, this is Chris. We'll be right back to the episode, but I wanted to talk to you a little bit about our sponsors today, starting with great folks over at the Ground Control Brewer, groundcontrol.coffee. They are launching their new brewer. The Cyclops brewer has been on the market for years and years, just blowing minds about the level of great quality batch brew that you can get and the extraction capability to make batch iced latte and batch cold brew with espresso extracts as well as cold brew extract. It's a great all-in-one machine, now made even better in a smaller package, lower MSRP, but 30% higher output of the espresso concentrate, cold brew concentrate. Same amazing batch brew coffee you can expect from that brewer, but you should check them out over at groundcontrol.coffee to learn more for yourself. If you're looking to differentiate, stand out, and get a machine that is efficient, beautiful, and a quality level up for your cafe, then maybe you should be getting a Ground Control for your coffee shop. Check them out again over at groundcontrol.coffee. I also want to talk to you about plant-based beverages, which of course make up such a huge category of our cafes, and the originals in the space of coffee shops are still here doing amazing work with the community with plant-based performance beverages designed for baristas and tested by world-class baristas. We're talking about the Barista Series from Pacific. PacificFoodService.com is where you should go to check it out and get samples. Have your team try these beverages and see for yourself how it stands up to the heat from steaming, produces great texture, and also has flavor balance to keep the coffee as the star of every drink. Again, check them out at PacificFoodService.com. If you're looking for the best plant-based beverages for your customers, I think it has to be the Barista Series from Pacific. So the last workflow that I want you to be implementing in your cafe, and I think it's worth every cafe implementing this, is basically in a customer experience workflow. There are a few components to this. There are about 7 components, but I'm just going to go through them and show you what I mean by a customer experience workflow. And we are all responsible for this, from how you set up the coffee shop to how you train your employees and what you actually review your employees' performance on. It's the values of your business, the operational values. That's one thing. But how they execute on making sure the customer experience happens in a quality way every single time, that's got to be another way that we assess the performance of staff and whether or not we are effective leaders and managers. Okay. So the first part of this workflow for the customer experience is when the customer enters the space. Up to this point, they may have heard about you from some source out there, but they haven't been to your cafe before. Even if they're an old customer, they still, each time they enter, are paying attention to what happens in this interaction. The brain, the human brain, constantly takes in information and it stores it somewhere. Even if people don't technically notice something in such a visceral way as to comment on it, it is noted somewhere. And you want to make sure that everything from the subtle to the obvious is a good thing. Okay. So you have to say, what is the customer experience when they're opening the door? Is the door easy to open? Are the windows clean? Is it obvious where to go? Can you get to the register and feel like you're comfortable with your body in the space and not bumping into people, right? There's a lot of things to consider that you have to plan for and say, this is part of our customer experience. When they enter, we want them to experience this. Now, the next stage that you have to detail, and I'm talking about several bullet points and details about when the customer is ordering, we want to do things like give them space and disarm them, because a lot of people feel tense and under pressure and they will choose quickly just to get out from that pressure. We need to be the presence of calm and attention and focus and congeniality and all of the nice things that you would hope would be in this specialty experience. The ordering is so important because they're in charge, but they're also kind of wanting to be guided sometimes And as a hospitality professional, you kind of have to develop the sense of what they want. Now, some people just know it right off the bat: espresso, coffee, latte, right? But we still have to allow them to see this as a safe place, not for them to get herded into the next queue, like the unofficial, the purgatorial waiting line over by the handoff. It's all about letting them see that we take this interaction just as seriously as we do the roasting and preparing of our coffee. It's about them. They're the customer, and we're about service. This is a service industry. So we're being sensitive to the needs of the guest. We're making sure things like not peppering them with question after question with the same tone and inflection every time. Keep it fresh, keep it genuine, make sure you're being creative and disarming. If you have to ask 7 questions, I always have tried to spread those out for the length of my conversation with somebody as I'm working too. And I maintain this eyes up, heads up service with the customer so that they see I'm not abandoning them to try to get my work done because they're a bother to me. I'm just being productive with the things that they need, but they know that I'm also still serving them. Okay. So ordering is such an important thing. And you might have a bunch of things that you put in there that you want to be a part of that experience too, but you got to plan it out. That's part of the workflow. Seating. Okay. Once the guest orders, they're going to have to go find a seat or they're going to wait for their drink. We always are alert, by the way. The whole episode, Shift Break, called Spiders, talking about how we're aware of what's happening in the web, no matter where it is in the cafe. We are always aware. Have they sat down? Are they waiting for their drink? If they sat down, what are you going to do? Scream across the cafe? Not the greatest thing to do. A lot of customers are looking for their beverage. You can make eye contact with them with a head nod and eye contact. You just put your hand up and they'll see you. I mean, there's some really subtle ways you can go about giving really great service and being in tune and in touch and in control. By the way, in control of what could be chaos. If you completely put a wall up between the customer and yourself, that's a great way to start to descend into emotional and mental chaos behind the bar, because you start to see the customer as the enemy, long lines as the curse of the day. Oh, we love the tips, but if it's really busy, that's terrible, because honestly, we're losing control because we don't have goals for each of these milestones in the experience. We don't know what to do with ourselves except make the drink, get it out, get the customer away from me. Make the drink, get it out, get the customer away from me. All right, so seating and waiting for the beverage. And then there's the pickup of the beverage. So when a customer comes to pick up their beverage, sometimes they're just met with the eye-popping frenzy of a barista that is buried. And that's a workflow issue, probably back to workflow number 1. But hopefully they're greeted with somebody who's making eye contact and has a pleasant demeanor and is giving them their drink, pushing it across the bar, maybe intentionally in a way that's not abrupt, using 2 hands, maybe even. There's a lot of ways you can signal this pickup is a intentional act of, here is your beverage, we're proud to present you. Even in a fast-paced environment, you can do intentional acts like that to show the customer you care. A long time ago, I talked about how even giving a customer a muffin in a paper bag, I would pat the bag with my hand as I gave it to them, just so that they see that, I don't know what it was, but it was just like, to me, it seemed like I'm going to say blessing it, but almost like I am intentionally placing this here for you. I am not in a hurry in that way. Like, you're not a bother. And when they pick up their drink, they should be thanked. Thank them. Thank you for buying this drink. They don't say, thank you for buying this drink. You just say, thank you, here you go, enjoy. And you can kind of finesse it from there. But when you choose that route, rather than descending into the frenzy, you give that chaos that's always at the door. I mean, you're talking to somebody, well, I'm talking to you, but you're listening to somebody right now who has struggled through just debilitating anxiety and panic attacks in my 20s. I mean, we're talking about ambulance stuff. And I will tell you, there is a lot of that whole thing. It is physiological in a lot of ways, but there is a mental game that gets played that you can rob it of its power by replacing it with the positive opposite. And I have done it so many times where I felt like vertigo was just a moment away at the register, or I got, looked at sideways by somebody who I was trying to be nice to, picking up a drink. and I started to, feel the flushness and stuff. And at that point, I was a little bit more fragile in terms of what could trigger like a panic attack or something. I'm getting very vulnerable with you here, but getting control of that moment was based on the idea that I had a duty to do something that was transcendent of that micro moment where it was like a rude customer. Okay, bless that person, and I'm going to live above it, right? And it worked. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to work for you, but what I'm saying is that having a plan and having a standard and having something that transcends all of the little things that sometimes we demand go right, or else we're just going to feel pissy, that really helps. Okay, so off my high horse or whatever, and let's get back to the pickup. So pickup is really important. The customer gets their drink. Sometimes you have to bring it out to them. If they have a baby or they're preoccupied, I will go above and beyond and I will bring them their beverage. Oh, you didn't have to do that. Oh, it's my pleasure, right? Just give them their drink. And then bussing the tables. Okay. In the workflow of customer experience, you bus the tables. When you're out, anytime you are confronted with a opportunity to be close to the customer, that is a milestone of the customer experience. So they're out there in the seating area, which hopefully is cleaned. We're bussing and we're cleaning. We still are willing to answer questions and help people and ask how things are going if it looks like maybe there's something that's going wrong, right? So that's part of the customer experience too. Plan out what it means to be a hospitality professional, even when you're just out in the cafe, grabbing cups, grabbing dishes, bussing tables, and that kind of thing. Now, when the customer leaves, this is where we drop the ball so often. We don't say goodbye. We don't say, thank you. We'll see you again next time. We just let them leave. Such a shame. If I was paying attention to that person in part of the back of my mind, if we all took responsibility, there's no way that person is leaving without us noticing. And I want to say goodbye. I want to say, all right, see you. Now, I know sometimes it's so busy, you can't do that for everybody, but it's something to strive for. It depends on the location of the exit, I know. But if you understand that somebody is taking off and leaving, or they bust their dish, or they just put the dish in the wrong place, and they're like, all these passive aggressive signs like, please put your dishes here, exclamation point, big arrow, smiley face, and they don't do it, we're still like, oh, thanks for coming, just put your drink right here. Like sometimes I do that in a city I'm not familiar with, and I realize I didn't put it in the bus bin like I was supposed to because I didn't see where it was. Where can I put this? Oh, just put it here. That's fine. Sometimes people will say, well, the bus bin's over there, and then they'll just walk away from me. And okay, maybe you're having a bad day, but let's talk about what's at stake here, okay? If you can't be bothered to be hospitable in this environment, and yet we are going to advocate for the farmer and the supply chain that went before us and all the work, like to me, that is a value opposite. So let's not pretend that we can't absorb some things that are inconvenient for us. Yeah, they didn't pile their cup in that tray for you. They brought it up. So we say, hopefully, graciously, thank you. And we take it. It's okay. No harm, no foul. They didn't throw it at you, hopefully. I've seen that happen, actually, in real life by somebody who was wanted by the police, but that's another story. Most people are not wanted by the police in another state, and they're not throwing coffee on you. They're just trying to put their cup somewhere, okay? So when they're leaving, again, to recap, say farewell, notice, thank you, and be gracious. Even if they don't know where to put things in the bus bin, it's fine. Okay, now the last one here for this workflow of customer experience, when they're gone, we don't gossip. We don't just dig into this opportunity to create some kind of a secret caricature of our least favorite customer. Sometimes the conversations I find happening around the customer are so imaginative and petty. The way they look, oh, they're probably this type of person. Or did you see the way they that? And you just like, you can't wait to talk to your friends about how terrible that person was. And sometimes I'm just like, they weren't really that bad. They just didn't genuflex in front of you or worship your barista-ness, right? When they're gone, we always make an effort to be connected and develop these long-term relationships with the guest by having a positive mindset about them. Hold them in regard. Look for them the next day. As people come more and more, you're going to be more familiar with their preferences, and you can offer an even better service by having a practiced positive view towards them. But if all you do is practice complaining about them and creating a caricature of them behind their backs, then you're not going to be able to give good service. And then you're going to be so confused as to why you're not getting the opportunities in your career that you want. And a lot of it has to do with that mindset. So we want to set this up from the beginning. Here's what we do from the time the guest enters, orders, is seated and waiting. They pick up their drink. We're bussing tables when the guest leaves. And even when they're gone, this is how we need to act. That is a huge workflow that I think every cafe should have. And I work with my clients to do that in their systems so that they can make sure the experience from the drinks that are ordered to the changes that are made to the experience that the customer has at each step of the way is going to be an excellent specialty coffee experience. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode today. If you have any questions about what I'm talking about, or if you're looking for somebody to work with you to develop these types of things for your cafe and to help coach you through the process of bringing things to the next level of your cafe through consulting, go ahead and email chris@keystotheshop.com. I would encourage you right now, though, one way to really increase the allure of your shop and one way to really make the details count is by choosing great materials to build with. Our friends at Arto Brick have you covered for your hard surface design needs, brick, tile, and stonework. They design, manufacture, and curate hard surfaces for one-of-a-kind places like your coffee shop. DM them on Instagram at Arto Brick and mention me, Chris, at Keys to the Shop when you DM them at Arto Brick. Please go ahead and look at their catalog and their Instagram and all the work they do. I love it when a cafe has these cool design details. And when you have the hard surfaces and the stonework and tiles on point, I mean, it really makes a huge difference in the feel of what you're getting there. It kind of makes the coffee taste better too. So anyway, reach out to them at Arto Brick, DM them, mention you heard about them on Keys to the Shop. And with that, that is the end of our show today, everybody. Go ahead and follow in the show notes down to the place where you see the recommended episodes if you want to learn more about today's subject in other aired episodes. And again, Chris at keystotheshop.com is where you can reach me. Follow on Instagram at Keys to the Shop. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.